Hello and welcome back. I'm Nicole, a cottage witch, and today I'm doing my May wrap up the book part. I'll film the deck part tomorrow. I don't know when I'm going to post them. Sometime in June. Anyway, I'm filming it at almost 9 p.m. so the light's going away. But I'm mostly talking about audiobooks anyway. So I don't have a lot of things to show you. Also because after work I went out foraging, which was the priority, because it was beautiful out, and so now I'm making some spruce tip syrup and horsetail and lemon balm tea, and it's iced tea, and it's lovely. So I'm very happy with that situation. Not so happy with the yellow clematises that attacked my hands a little bit, so just ignore the band-aids. It's an ongoing conflict, and it remains to be seen who's going to win. But basically, there are two types of books I've been reading the last month. One is Western classics, like European classics, mostly, sometimes American, but mostly Western European. And then biblical scholarship for some reason. I'm not a Christian anymore. I used to be. Grew up in a fundamentalist community of bloggers, like extremist people. So that sort of put me off that. But I started listening to the Data Over Dogma podcast, and then went down sort of a rabbit hole, as happens sometimes. But anyway, the first rabbit hole I went down started last month when I was reading all these classics. And then this month I just kind of started. I didn't start anything this month. I continued this month reading some of these. So one of the first ones I read, and like I said, most of them were audiobooks. So I listened to Faust. There are there are two parts. The second part is boring. The first part is very good. Very good. Interesting. So I read the second part from this book, but listened to it via an audiobook. And can I just say, first to verse translations are not something almost anybody is good at. So can we just not? Because honestly, I don't like them. But that's just me. But it was a really interesting story. I'm glad I read it, especially because it comes up a lot in like literature, and there's an opera called Faust, which I have not seen. But you know, it comes up especially because it's just a part of German mythology. So I was glad at least I know the story now. At least the first one. The second one that involved Helen of Troy was weird. Anyway, then I also listened to this on Audible. So I think it was the whole Divine Comedy audiobook. Yeah, it was. And I listened to Inferno, and that was fascinating. So I'm very glad I did that, because that's also referenced in a lot of Western literature. And it's really interesting. And then I kept going and listened to part of the Purgatorio. And wow, is it boring. So I stopped. It's just terraces in purgatory with Italian people I've never heard of. So the Inferno was much more interesting. Fun fact. Then, this may seem like a detour, but I got the Literary Tarot. So I'll talk more about this in this study video. I'm going to do a video this month of all the decks I've been studying, because that's made up the bulk of my tarot use this month, is just studying things. So anyway, because I was on this classics kick, I got this. This guidebook is useless. But the cards are quite nice. I don't actually know if you can see them. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. I've reverted to using an overhead light. So there might be some funny glare, but that's the best I can do. So I got this when I was in the middle of my classics reading kick. And exactly half of the deck, so 39 cards, I had read. Some of them have a weird bow with them now. That's fun. Not really sure what's going on there. Whatever. So I read half of them. So that's that pile. And then I divided the other half up into ones that I wanted to try and read soon, and ones that maybe someday. if I read them, some of them I don't really want to read. Like there are 2 Jane Austen ones in there, and I have tried. I have read Pride and Prejudice. I tried to read Sense and Sensibility. I've read Northanger Abbey? I can't remember if I'm getting that word right or not. And if I was ever going to like a Jane Austen book, it would be that one. But I don't. So apologies to all the Jane Austen fans out there. But I think Persuasion and Emma are in this pile, and I just can't see myself reading them. Also, there's a Dickens book in here somewhere, and I can't get into him either. So anyway, this does relate to the classics I read this month, because then basically I went through this and went, okay, of the ones that I'm interested in reading, let's get to it. So I read Paradise Lost, which is also very good. I read L'amour d'auteur, which I loved. That was fantastic. I can't believe I'd never read any Arthur stories before, like ever in my life. How did that happen? No idea. Same with Beowulf. I don't know how I hadn't read this earlier. It's fantastic. I listened to the audiobook of Seamus Heaney's translation. I think that's his name. The Irish poets. And yeah, it's really good. I like it. This is The Most Dangerous Game. That was a kind of weird and creepy short story. Very, very nightmarish, so that's cool. The Black Cat, I think this one is called. It's a Poe story. This is The Monkey's Paw, another short story. So some of these short stories you can get on Audible for like $4 each or something. So I got a bunch of them. This one, now I'm blanking on the name of this one. But also I have no idea how it relates to temperance. So some of them still don't make it. Like there are a couple that are just weird. Most of them are pretty good, I think, despite the fact that their process for matching them is a bit not the recommended way to go about it. But most of them I think are pretty good. That is an exception. I'm blanking on the name of this story too. It was a weird book. It was good. I liked that story though. This is, one second. I only wrote down the actual books. So this is The Hanged Man. The Hanged Man. Oh, and The Tower. I'll look at The Outsider. So this was an H.P. Lovecraft short story. It was kind of weird, but also pretty good. What's this? The Hanged Man. This is the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, which I'm not 100% sure I get as the Hanged Man, but okay. Like, it's not as bad as this one, which just makes no sense. This is Bartleby the Scrivener, A Journal of Wall Street by Herman Melville. Now, I've read Moby Dick a couple of times, and I love that book. I'll probably read it again. It's so beautiful. I love his writing. And the writing in this was beautiful, too. There's something I'm missing about... I don't know if there's, like, some sort of social commentary in the story I'm missing, because the subtitle is A Story of Wall Street. So if there's something in his behavior that's commenting on that, I feel like there's a connection that I should be making that I'm not making. So anyway, it was a good story though. I liked it. This is A Room with a View, which was sort of a meh book. It would have been better if she'd just gone off on her own adventures at the end, but you know, that's that's my opinion on that one. This is, what is this? Oh, this is the Inferno. This is Dante's Inferno, with all the bodies and the river Styx. That was kind of a gross part of the book, like weird. But anyway, I assume that's Virgil and one of these folks. That must be Dante. Anyway, it was a cool book, Inferno. Bit weird, but cool. The Lovers was The Age of Innocence, also kind of meh. That one and A Room with View are just so not my style. This one, though, was fun. This was something about a bath lady. It's one of the Canterbury Tales, and I just read that one, but now I've got to read some of the other Canterbury Tales because that one was quite fun. Actually, maybe I'll look that up while I'm at it. The Wife of Bath's Tale by Chaucer. Yeah, that was fun. I like her. And then these are the ones that I've still got to read. This is a short story that I can't remember the name of. This is Tom Jones, I believe. Page of Ink, or maybe I'm getting it mixed up. Actually, Page of Ink, The Magic Mountain. The Magic Mountain I'm listening to right now. So that's a work in progress. This is Leaves of Grass. And this is Vanity Fair. Vanity Fair is another one of those that I just have a hard time imagining myself enjoying. So I'm going to read The Magic Mountain and Leaves of Grass. There are a couple others here. Oh, The Monkey King I might read because I got that as an audiobook. And then, oh, Emily of New Moon. Someday I should read that. The Jungle Book. Can't remember. The Metamorphosis. I want to read that one too. I've got a French audiobook of that, which will be too difficult for me, but I might give it a go anyway. So yeah, there are a couple in the to read later pile that I might read next month, but some of these are just gonna have to wait. The Phantom of the Opera, I do want to read that, but I want to read it in French, but my French is not good enough. I think this is The Pillow Book. I have that as an audiobook as well. Yeah, and then I might, once I've read those, I may revisit this pile. But I'm going to start with these ones. Actually, I'm going to pull out that Pillow Book one. Because I think I will get to that maybe this month meaning June, and The Metamorphosis. So yeah, we'll see. Vanity Fair might be a DNF because I read the synopsis and yeah. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's gonna do anything for me. So that's that. These ones are gonna go in on the other side of the little ribbon. So yeah, that's been my classics reading adventure, which has been mostly fun. Like even Room with a View and The Age of Innocence, I'm kind of glad I read just so I know what they're about, but I'm never gonna read them again. And then, because I don't have anything to show for this part, here, what's handy? This is handy. This is The Tarot of Persephone's Garden by Forest Fay Maiden. I think I got that right. She's got a YouTube channel, but also an Etsy shop. But yeah, Tarot of Persephone's Garden. So I'll just flip through this. Maybe I'll zoom in a little bit while I talk about the next batch of books. And there we go. All right. So yeah, I started this Data Over Dogma podcast because it's got Dan McClellan, who's a biblical scholar. I think he's Mormon, but you wouldn't know his religion from listening to the scholarship. Like, he keeps his actual beliefs separate from the scholarship, which I appreciate. Is this too glary? It's gonna have to be what it is. So yeah, I really appreciate listening to him. And then his co-host is another Dan, who is not a biblical scholar and is an atheist, but just has a lot of good questions. Like questions that ordinary people who are not biblical scholars would have. So that's pretty cool. And So I've been reading this, and then they mentioned books a fair bit on the podcast. So the first one, because I got the translation of the Bible that they recommended as the like scholarly, you know, what's most accepted by biblical scholars as a good modern translation, is what I'm trying to say. Because some translations, I think it's the English Standard Translation, is like intentionally trying to be as misogynistic as possible. The NIV was specifically trying to minimize the number of contradictions. So other translations have agendas, is what I'm saying. And this one is basically just a translation. Never mind that, you know, the writers of the various books may have had their own agendas. So I listened to some, what are they called? The Great Courses, audiobooks, which are generally pretty good. I like them a lot. And so one of them was Understanding the Old Testament by Robert D. Miller. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed that one. And then The Old Testament by Amy Jill Levine. That wasn't quite as good. That was like, you know, solid 3 stars. It was, you know, like, glad I listened to it. Not amazing. And then I listened to Writing the Bible, Origins of the Old Testament, which looked at specifically how it was written, because one of the things that Dan McClellan talks about quite a lot is that it wasn't written as we read it, as one book, cover to cover. It was written in like bits and pieces, and then transcribed in bits and pieces, and then those pieces were sort of edited together at various points throughout the years, and then some of them were lost, and then some of them were found again. It's a whole odyssey, basically, the process of the Bible having been written. I listened to another great courses on world religions, Judaism, and then one that I didn't finish called Reading Biblical Literature, and I thought I would like this more than I did, because it was about reading the Bible as literature, but it was just to English Class 101 for me. So I found it a bit dull, and it was mostly just retellings of the stories with some like basic, you know, English 101 odds and ends picked out, like pointed out to you. One great courses that was very interesting was Gary Rensburg. I don't know if that's how you say his name. Did a sort of deep study of just the book of Genesis. That was really interesting, like basically line by line. You went all in. And then a couple of the books that were recommended on this podcast that I got were A History of the Bible by John Barton, which is also talks about how it came to be, you know, who, as far as anybody knows, who probably wrote what, because there's a lot of supposition. Like there are a lot of suppositions, maybe not the right word. They're like, based on what they know, this probably happened. You know, or somebody probably wrote this part, somebody else probably wrote this part, and then somebody else again probably combined them together, you know, that sort of. So they make these apparently I was in the middle of saying they make educated guesses when my phone had the nerve to run out of space. So I think that's fixed now. Anyway, then so that was A History of the Bible by John Barton. And then I read Truth and Fiction and the Da Vinci Code by Bart Ehrman. And he was another one who was on this podcast as a guest, and it was really good. And he's written a lot of popular books about the Bible, and was fascinating on the podcast. So I thought, well, this will be interesting, because I'd read the book years and years ago. Thought it was, you know, not groundbreaking, but fun. It's a fun, fast-paced sort of read. And I think this Bart Ehrman book is free if you already have a Audible subscription. So I read that. That was pretty cool. And then I read God and Anatomy by Francesca Stavrakopoulou, I believe. I'm not good at Greek names, but she wrote a book about how, I think this is kind of her academic specialty. It's like how God is perceived in the Old Testament. throughout the Old Testament, because it changes. How he's perceived changes quite a lot over the years. And it's quite a controversial book, apparently. Not in academia, because I think she's pretty well respected in academia, but in just sort of more religious circles, it's a bit controversial because it talks about things. It talks about God in a way that, you know, she backs up her claims, I think, quite well. But, you know, maybe doesn't show everything the way the more dogmatic religious folks would like. And then I read When God Had a Wife by Lynn Picknett and Clive Prince. And that was a little disappointing. I was hoping for more. I was hoping for more, like, biblical scholarship. It's sort of in the same vein as Francesca's book. I'm not going to attempt her last name again. And it wasn't that. It started out pretty good, talking about Asherah, who is a fascinating figure, who was the consort of El and then Yahweh. And then kind of erased from history as they tore down, like in one of these moments of priestly or prophet-y religious fervor, tore down her, you know, figures and whatnot. And so a lot of information about her has been lost. And so it started out with what we know about her. And so that was very interesting. I enjoyed that. And also about neighboring cultures and because other Canaanites had sort of overlapping ideas of the divine pantheon, you could say. And so it started out interesting, and then it veered into other, like, New Testament characters like Mary Magdalene and other just women in the Bible. And it was interesting, but it ended up getting a bit too suppositional. Like, it relied too much. I don't feel like their conclusions always followed from the evidence they presented. And they presented a lot of information, so it makes it look like their arguments are well supported. But I don't actually think all of their conclusions follow from the evidence they presented. And by the end, it started to get really, really light on facts. So yeah, that was a bit disappointing. But yeah, so there are a couple others I'm still reading, but I'll put those in next month's video. So that was my very sort of strange, I don't know, off the beaten path reading list for the month. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.